Stories of an aircraft builder. Stories of an aircraft builder. The Little Helpers. From 1930 onwards, motorized bicycles provided mobility for large sections of the population. They continued to be produced even during the Second World War, because they were needed, as two Bob Phänomen from this period prove. Achim Engels pulls the propeller through with his hands. Blub, blub. It goes under the engine hood of the time-honored high-wing aircraft, gaining momentum again and that blub, blub again. The procedure is repeated several times until Achim calls "Ignition on!" into the cockpit of his Macchi MB308. Now give the propeller another push with full physical effort, and then finally its uneven, pleasant brum, brum, brum sound from the short tailpipes of the air-cooled Continental 4-cylinder boxer engine with a capacity of 3.1 liters and around 85 horsepower. Achim Engels is smiling all over his face. Simple technology can be so beautiful. Meanwhile, a barking two-stroke noise mingles with the bassy whirling of the large volume four-stroke engine. Alexandra has rushed over on her aviator grey motorcycle to quickly deliver the flight log to the partner, so that he always has the bird's-eye view. Her white-grey nurse's uniform perfectly matches the Phänomen Bob, which 7-liter tank is emblazoned with large DRK letters. The brown leather Red Cross bags at the back of the luggage rack and the light luggage along the tinny cooking utensils complete the equipment of the wiry emergency vehicle. It is not the only Bob of the Engels, as they are known among friends. When the aircraft manufacturer is not hovering over the countryside in his now 62-year-old Italian airplane or working on the reconstruction and building of Fokker aircraft in his hangar in Schorndorf, he likes to swing onto the saddle of his own Phänomen Bob, which looks much friendlier in its civilian grey-silver paintwork and blue trim. The two Bobs date from a time when civilian vehicles were no longer a viable production option in Germany. There was a war on. Alexandra's Bob is the older of the two motorcycles. It was put on the production line at the Phänomenon Works at Zittau in 1940, while Achim's model only left the production halls in Upper Lusatia 3 years later in 1943. How could this happen in the middle of the war? The Hitler regime had issued a decree on type restrictions in the motor vehicle industry for the benefit of the armaments industry and banned many small manufacturers from production. And only those who could produce a purchase certificate were allowed to buy, and this was given to those who could prove a need: doctors, teachers, forestry workers, midwives and nurses were often the first to enjoy a motorcycle. During the restoration of Alexandra's Bob, shreds of aviation grey paint peeked out from under a layer of dirt and rust, indicating that this vehicle was once in the service of the Red Cross. The motorized bicycle business had started at the beginning of the 1930s out of the hardship of the global economic crisis. Ilo and Fichtel and Sachs built small two-stroke engines with 60 or 74 cubic centimeters, which were initially mounted on simple bicycle frames to provide the population with an inexpensive way of getting around. However, a number of frame breakages forced the small manufacturers, who had set up shops all over Germany, to come up with more stable engines and designs. When Ilo and Fichtel and Sachs offered two-stroke two-speed engines with 98 cubic centimeters and more than 2 horsepower in 1933, the windy bicycle frames were finally a thing of the past. What remained were the pedals, to start the engine or to be able to pedal up a steep incline if necessary. Phänomen was always involved right from the start of motorcycle development, from the first M20 in 1930 to the Bob in 1943. And Fichtel and Sachs was always a supplier to the brand from Upper Lusatia. But the Schweinfurt-based company not only supplied the engine, the canlid brake in the front wheel and the torpedo freewheel hub with coaster brake also came from Fichtel and Sachs. This meant that the vehicle manufacturers hardly needed to worry about their own developments. Buying in and plugging together was the motto everywhere. Except at Phänomen. They developed an automatic gear shift for the small two-stroke motorcycle which took care of shifting and clutching with a single movement. The first Bobs from 1937 still had such a unit. Probably for cost reasons, Alexandra's Bob did not have one in 1940. Her model has a simple tank switch that takes a bit of practice to change gear easily. Pull the clutch, take your hand off the throttle, quickly push the lever in the bulky gear shift gate into the next position, release the clutch again and quickly put your hand on the throttle before the vehicle loses momentum and the gear shift is a waste of time. Apart from the awkward shifting work, the lightweight Bob 6 sacks across the road with a semi-hands-free riding style. I'm sure people think I can't ride motorcycles properly. Probably typically a woman, laughs Alexandra. Achim has it much easier. On his Bob, the gear shift has been moved away from the tank to the right of the handlebar. With his thumb, he can easily shift back and forth between idle first and second gear, without having to take his hand off the throttle and lose precious time. It's so easy. But not at the starting ceremony. Although the simply constructed two-stroke engines with flywheel magneto-ignition has a decompression valve in the cylinder head to allow it to turn more easily, after flooding the separate float chamber on the 18mm carburetor and closing the starter flap on the wet air filter, half a turn on the pedal is usually not enough to bring the built-in engine to life. That's why Achim prefers to pedal. Set off, engage a gear, pull the decompression lever, and after a few meters the first blue clouds of mist rise from the chrome fishtail. So that Achim soon no longer has to pedal. Nevertheless, the whole thing remained an ordeal. Achim is not exactly small, but the Bob has a very low frame. Phänomen had decided to go its own way in frame construction to make it look more like a motorcycle rather than a motorbike, or light motorbike. This included the so-called low-slung sports frame, which top tube was lowered so much that the suspension saddle only offered a seat height of 73 centimeters, too low to pedal while seated. They became a substitute for a kickstarter and for operating the rear brake. The Upper Lusatians went their own way in the front suspension. Previously, like other manufacturers, they had installed Hacker or Tiger forks. Now they wanted their own design that required no maintenance and worked quietly. A swing fork. A cylindrical metal core and a metal shell were vulcanized onto a soft rubber body between them. The fork could swing back and forth around this cylinder. A convenient solution that also proved its worth in practice. Achim Engels is not afraid to chase his Bob over bumpy country lanes. She doesn't mind. They didn't have better roads in the past anyway, he says calmly. So why shouldn't it work today? The fact that the swing fork is a crutch in terms of driving physics, because the caster changes with every moment, is irrelevant in practical use. A motorcycle had to be reliable and undemanding. Nothing more. With the tools supplied, it was possible to tighten all the vital screws, tension the chain, change tires, clean the carburetor, check the ignition contact, and even dismantle the cylinder head to clear the combustion chamber and the nose piston of performance-reducing oil carbon. If it's running free properly, it will easily run its 50s. Achim Engels is sure. and if he has enough momentum, he might even get up the next long climb without the Fichtel running out of breath and having to downshift to first gear and help by pedaling. 50 kilometers is certainly realistic. Achim doesn't know for sure. Neither his nor his partner's Bob have a speedometer. This was an option extra for Phänomen and was only available for an additional 18 Reichsmark. An electric horn also costs a further 9 Reichsmarks 50. But this in turn required a more powerful 15 watts alternator. All in all, a Bob came to a proud 333 Reichsmark. By now, the Amaki's 4-cylinder boxer engine has reached operating temperature. Achim closes the cabin hatch, puts on his headphones, accelerates and taxis towards the runway. Alexandra stays behind. Her work clothes, hand-sewn by her mother according to the original pattern, flutter in the wind of the propeller. When Achim returns from his flight, they will both take their Bobs for a spin and ride over the Swabian Alps. Only flying is better? Not at all.